So good morning, everyone. My name is Michelle O'Shaughnessy, and I'm the APAC Senior Channel Leader at Smartsheet, and I'm your host today for today's excellent session. On behalf of Aurion Systems and Smartsheet, we welcome to Strategy and Insights on Cybersecurity. We have a great lineup for you this morning. We have two fantastic speakers, Amit and Greg Collins, who will share their experiences and insight into cybersecurity. Our speakers will then join us for a panel discussion. This will be followed by a demonstration from Pradeep at Aurion Systems, a customer spotlight on PayPal before closing off with some final remarks. So without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce Amit, our keynote speaker, who will take us through the current cybersecurity landscape in Australia, insights and best practices. Amit is a seasoned technology and cybersecurity risk professional, spanning a career of over 20 years across the Asia Pacific, with an extensive experience of managing IT and cyber risk into the financial industry, technology services, and critical infrastructure. He is also the Deputy Chair of the Australian Information Security Association Sydney Committee, Cyber Ambassador for Oz Cyber New South Wales Innovation Node, and a member of the Australian Institute of Company Directors. Welcome, Amit. The floor is all yours.
It's a tough ask generally, being on a panel or in a session and you start talking about cyber, because cyber is something that's very vast. You can't just cover in 5 minutes. But again, thanks so much for inviting me and giving me an opportunity to speak on this forum. I think so. Thanks for the introduction, Michelle. I really appreciate what you have called out. But again, I just want to possibly, it's not all about cyber. I think so. We just need to go back a little bit, last 10 years, and maybe a journey which has traveled all the way, how the cyber evolved over the period of time. If we go back to 1990, 95, at that point in time, there's no such thing called cyber, right? It was all information security, and we have information security teams sitting with. So I would say it's just that name has changed from information security to cyber security. What has definitely changed is the threat landscape, right? Earlier, we were too much talking about managing the cyber or information security risk from your own organizational perspective. You're trying to implement a lot of technologies and processes and governance within your organization because you think that the risk is within organization, mostly about managing those controls to avoid anyone coming to your organization from external or internal. What has evolved over the period of time is basically your threat landscape is keep changing. So if we talk about 1995, we were using Windows 95, 97, Windows 2000. The risk was very different. Over the period of time, the remote technology has evolved. So people started working remotely because, okay, if we have a remote support model, we need to give opportunity and ability for people to actually go and start working from an offshore location, because the BPO model has came in the picture. You have US companies outsourcing the work in India or Philippines and other countries. So they need an ability to actually have the same look and feel of a technology, but sitting in somewhere else. So your threat landscape has moved from, okay, so I am having everything on-prem, but I will still extend my on-prem systems ability, connectivity to someone else. And hence the threat landscape is keep evolving. And where we are sitting in the pandemic 2020, we have an office culture where we mostly thought about people are coming to the office and sitting in the office and doing the work. So I don't have to worry too much about the endpoint risk. But now I'm sitting at home, somebody else is sitting at home, everybody's sitting at home. So actually your perimeter risk has moved again, which is now talking about the security of the endpoints. And recently I have been talking to someone, somebody has shared with me something which is absolutely eye-opening. Recently somebody noticed that their home network, the Wi-Fi, the router they use has been attacked by a hacker, because they are not able to get to the company or organization system, or because they have the controls in place. So they thought if the person is connecting through the VPN, I can go and bypass the home network. And then from there on, possibly I'll try to go and connect to the person computer, which is connected to the VPN to their office network. So you can see literally that the hackers are, or the risks are continuously evolving. People are actually trying to do something, and then you realize the threat landscape has changed. You try to work with that, and it keeps shifting. So there was a concept about shift left and shift right, which I've heard when I was working with Citibank and JP Morgan quite a long time. But there's no shift left or shift right anymore for me. It's basically you keep shifting, right? Either you shift left or shift right, but the shift is actually continuously happening. So with that shift, we are in the catching game now, right? We are catching up for everything. So you defined a strategy 3 years back because you thought I'm going to implement certain technology processes and tools to manage these risks. Come 2020, the ransomware attack increasing. So what happened? Now everybody's thinking about how to actually mitigate a ransomware attack, and then start working about protect, containment, and recovery strategy. But what's going to happen in 2022, we don't know, right? Because again, it might shift. So I think so the key, what I'm trying to convey here is that if you think that one strategy you have put in place, it might not be same strategy in next 6 months, in next 12 months. So sometimes we have been asked to put a strategy from a forward-looking approach, forward-looking mindset that, okay, what you think we should be having a next 3 to 5 year strategy. And sometimes people actually, I can just relate this. When you go for an interview, people say, what do you want to do in 3 years and 5 years? And this is something that's just not easy for even a person to tell what he wants to do in 3 to 5 years. He might have some vague vision about himself, but not necessarily anybody can, 100% say, this is what I want to do, because things might change. And actually, that's the same thing is happening in the cybersecurity, because today you're talking about a risk, tomorrow the risk is changed. So you have to just shift your strategy. And you might not shift the whole strategy. You shift some pieces in the strategy to contain or to mitigate or to address that specific requirement. So I would say this is an evolving world. This is an evolving area. And we have to ensure that we are aware about what risks are is there. It's because it's keep changing. Keep yourself appraised about any changes, and if needed, just adjust this, because you can't just go with that. I have designed this 3 years back, so I'll continue to do this, and I don't worry about something else. But actually, my suggestion would be you need to look the risk factor, what risk factor you have, what you need to do to address that. And again, if your business is changing, your business model is changing, you have to go back and relook your whole strategy or your approach about securing the business. So as a closing note, I would say, don't stuck with what you have agreed and what you have decided, because you have to have a mindset about changing your approach about managing your cyber risk. So but that's pretty much from me on the keynote. Thank you so much, Michelle.
Thank you, Amit. Just in those few minutes, I was writing down notes and, wanting to ask so many questions. So looking forward to joining the panel later on for more discussion. Now I would like to introduce Greg Collins, who is currently serving as the Global Director of Sales for Silicon Valley and cybersecurity firm Deep Factor. With 25 years in technology and business, Greg is an investor, advisor, founder of 2 companies, and Fortune 50 leader of businesses that have delivered $1.5 billion in revenue over 11 years. Wow. Greg's focus is on helping organizations secure enterprise applications with transformation programs that leverage the next generation of technology. And as we heard from Amit, we need to be across the next shift and what is next, and to keep up to date. Welcome, Greg. The floor is yours.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Michelle, for those incredibly kind words. I'd just like to thank Smartsheet and Aurion for inviting me to talk today. And it's fantastic to connect with the Asia Pacific audience. I feel like shutdowns and lockdowns here in the US, they're a long time ago. So I just want to send my regards. I know Australia is going through some lockdowns, and there's still some countries in Asia that are going through some lockdowns. So I just want to send my best regards. Hang in there, hang tight, and wishing you all the best in this challenging period. So thank you, Amit. That was a wonderful keynote. You touched on some really key points, and I want to build on some of those points. And as you mentioned, cybersecurity, it's a really broad area, and it's not something that we can cover in depth in the space of an hour. So today, I thought I might touch on securing enterprise applications. So you might hear some buzzwords out there like DevSecOps, AppSec, securing applications. What does that really mean to the organization? And most importantly, how do you secure enterprise applications? So I'm going to walk you through a deck today and take you on that journey and discuss with you a couple of ways that you can secure enterprise applications. So organizations are moving to continuous observability for security and compliance. Well, what does that mean? It's a next generation application security technology that looks at the application while it's in runtime. We observe the application in the CI pipeline, in the test and stage areas of the CI pipeline. So in essence, what we're doing is we're looking at the application, developers are looking at the application, AppSec people are looking at the application in the CI pipeline before pushing it into production. So using Deep Factor, you're able to capture billions or up to billions of telemetry events and then identify real and meaningful, actionable security, compliance, and vulnerability alerts or risks. Next slide, please. So the analogy that we've come up with in sort of looking at application security in your CI pipeline is there's a lot of static analysis tools out there. You may hear terms like SAST, container scanners, SCA, etc. They're kind of like looking at a parked car. Would you buy a car, without test driving it first? And that's really what these static analysis tools are doing. And so with Deep Factor, what that allows you to do is observe the application while it's running, while it's out there on the track, on the road. You can actually see what the application's doing, so you know exactly what vulnerabilities the application is alerting you to before you push that application into productions. So it's a great way to identify security and compliance risks before pushing your application into production. Next slide, please. So I think I've touched on this a little bit already. We look at DevSecOps initiatives in two parts. You've got your static analysis tools, on the left there, like SAST, SCA, container scanning. And if some of you want some more information about this, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I understand that we've got people on this call that may not understand some of the acronyms and want some more details, but we've only got a set amount of time here. But feel free to reach out to me afterwards. And then on the right, I'd say we've got our runtime tools like IAST, DAST. They're doing some dynamic analysis and, of course, continuous observability. Next slide, please. So how do those application security technologies, fit into, the software development lifecycle or the CI pipeline? And on the screen now, we've got a typical CI pipeline, describing the steps of the software development lifecycle, largely focused on, the application security area. So we've got SAST, we've got container scanners, SCA tools, and then we've got other tools like DAST and IAST, which do some dynamic scanning. And some of these technologies are 10 or 15 years old, which were great for developers 10 or 15 years ago, when developers were typically writing most of the code that went into the application. But these days, developers are typically writing maybe 10, 20, maybe 30% of the code that actually goes into the application. The rest of the application is made up of containers, open source, and various third-party software packages. Next slide, please. So, as Amit was talking about, we have that shift left philosophy, secure at the source. So we need to empower developers with a modern DevSecOps platform that can handle developers writing 10, 20, 30% of the code, calling on containers, utilizing open source and various third-party software packages. You need to be able to look at the application in runtime so you can identify all the security risks, vulnerabilities, and compliance issues that the developer, is not deliberately putting into the application. It may be by accident. Typically, developers are under pressure to, push releases out, to, generate code quickly. And so by looking at the application in runtime, as, Amit was talking about, it helps developers secure at the source, that shift left philosophy, so they can generate, secure code and focus on the areas in which they want to focus on, which is, generating, applications that deliver expanded functionality and to be able to deliver them at speed, because we're all under pressure to deliver quicker and faster, but also not at the expense of security. So the benefit of looking at the application in runtime is a lot of these static code analysis tools like SAST, container scanners, SCA, etc. They're generating and doing a lot of static analysis and generating hundreds, maybe thousands of security alerts. And some of these alerts are false positives. Some of them may not be applicable, because they don't fall within the policy guidelines. But developers are still having to sift through, working out what's real, what's not, what I need to action, and this all takes time. It slows down the process of generating, functional but also secure applications that can be released at speed. Next slide, please. So, how easy and universal is, a platform like DeepFactor? Developers love DeepFactor for a couple of reasons. One is, if you look at traditional AppSec or application security tools, they typically are embedding code into the application so they can do their analysis. Whereas with DeepFactor, it's zero code changes. The developer does not need to embed any AppSec code into their application. And that has a number of benefits, which we won't be able to touch on today. The other reason I've got some of these points up here is, we've got modern technologies like Kubernetes and Docker that organizations are moving to. And it doesn't matter whether you're running Kubernetes, Docker, traditional, non-container, it doesn't matter. You just run one simple command line, DeepFactor will execute and start observing your application and capturing all those telemetry events that I was talking about earlier to produce actionable and meaningful security alerts for the developers and AppSec team. Next slide, please. So we don't have time to dig into all these insights, but these are the 10 insights that incorporated into the DeepFactor platform. Some of the most popular ones and hot ones at the moment is a software bill of materials. So we've all read about the headline grabbing hacks that are happening, the ransomware, the JBS, meat processing, SolarWinds, Microsoft, etc. That are focused on the software supply chain. And so we've got a feature and function there, the software bill of materials, that can give you deep insights, capture all the dependencies that your application may be calling when it's running. Another one is the system call risks, We go down right into the process, memory, and file system level of the application to see if there's any abnormalities there or anything that shouldn't be happening. Behavior risks. So we study the behavior of the application. Now, is the application calling on, say, China, Russia, or North Korea, some of these countries that they shouldn't be calling on? I think in the interest of time, if you want to understand more of these insights and some of the features and functions that go into Deep Factor, more than happy to catch up offline. Next slide, please. So this is the last slide, and just capturing everything that I've talked about today. It's like, why would you push an application into production, without test driving it first? You wouldn't. So test drive your application with Deep Factor so that you can identify any any compliance issues, vulnerabilities, or security risks. This way you can ship faster and more securely. And why would you want to do that? There's a couple of reasons, or two good reasons. One is the average cost of a breach is about $3.8 million, according to IBM. That's US dollars, by the way. And it's about 280 days for a large enterprise organization to recover from a breach. Another important point is just resolving the vulnerability so you don't get breached, you don't experience a hack. Just resolving a software vulnerability in production costs you about 60 times more. Next slide, please. Well, that's it for me. Thanks very much for the presentation.
That was just so insightful, and really appreciate taking the time to share with us those insights. I would like to now introduce the panel. Welcome once again to the people that maybe have joined late to the strategies and insights on cybersecurity. Amit, we get a lot of organizations asking the question, why do I need to worry about cybersecurity? From your experience, could you shed some light on why this is important?
It's a very good question. And I generally ask the question back to the person, why you think it's not important, right? Why you think it's not important. And I think so sometimes people possibly don't understand what they're dealing with it in terms of the risk. They think, and actually it's not about organizations, it's all about everyone's life, where you have the kids doing the online learning at home, kids watching the Netflix and other stuff, right? We have our parents who are possibly not from the tech savvy world. They have been forced to do internet banking over the phone in this COVID time because they can't go. So if we are talking about the cyber risk, right, it's multi-pronged problem. It's not only the financial issue, it's also about the emotional issue. It's about the mental stress issue, right? If you talk about a person who has worked 65, 70 years, and that person has kept the money in the bank, right? And one single SMS or text or email actually drain out the whole account because the person don't really understand what it means for me. And then he realized the whole life savings is gone, right? You think about the stress the person will go through because that's not traceable. Most of the time it's not traceable because it's just the way the backend application and other things works for this hacker. They immediately change the stuff, right? I can give you a very, very recent example, which has happened in my family back in India, right? So I have some bad time in last 3-4 months, and Ashok and Pradeep know about that. In my family, I have lost 2 family members in last 3 months. My brother's son, he was playing on the phone, right? He's 12 years old. Let's think about it. He is quite tech savvy. He used the WhatsApp. He sent me messages and everything. But then he got a barcode scan on his mobile phone, right? And he thought it's genuine because it looks super genuine because a 12-year-old kid may not be able to figure out the phishing attempt, because it looks so genuine. This is so sophisticated. And he thought it's genuine, and he just did the scan. And immediately within 2 minutes, the bank account has been deducted with some money, maybe say $500, something like that, right? Now think from the perspective, what has gone after that? They immediately realize something has gone wrong. 2 or 3 people of the family is running to the bank and talking to the people and trying to solve the problem. But actually what a hacker did, it just used the smart technology, right? He did nothing. He's maybe sitting somewhere too far, though you don't even know. But think about the mental stress they are going through. They are going through the physical stress and getting drained, and then trying to figure it out what happened. If it's a small amount, you might just say, oh, I have lost it. But think about someone's saving for whole life is gone just because you just clicked the one link. So I would say the things are changing quite rapidly. Things are changing quite rapidly. The way of attack is changing. The threat vector is changing. People are coming, the hackers are coming with the new techniques. And that's why I feel the education and awareness at every level is very important, because you are really not sure what next, what's coming up. Are you really prepared for that? I have written something which I will just read it, and allow me to read that. I read the threat is real, right? And it's not some shady character with a gray hooded sweatshirt looking at scoring lines of green code. This is very, very important, right? From a volume standpoint, it is largely automated and general broadcasted to the large set of people over the internet. What I'm talking about, that a person writing a script, sending a bunch of emails, right? And 1 person or 2 person might fall into that, right? What is this really that person is putting the effort? No, it's the technology, evolving technology, helping them to write those codes and then sending those emails. But actually, if you see the impact of on a person who actually get into that trouble, right? So what I'm saying, it is real. And it's no more like large organization, a small organization, a small businesses. It's everywhere. I gave you the example of my own family, and you can figure it out. A 12-year-old kid didn't understand what happened, and you lost the money. Now you go and explain the 12-year-old kid what happened. He might think that it's just that I don't know, because he don't know what is phishing, right? So my view is that if you get an opportunity to educate anyone at any point in time through any forum, it's either it's a phishing problem, or it's SMS problem, it's a text problem, it's a endpoint problem. As much as you can educate to them, they might be better prepared and equipped to deal with something which they may not have seen, because every situation will be very different. So I'll stop here and maybe invite others to share.
Well, I would like to just, when I think of cybersecurity, it's usually large organizations or customers, but now, especially in lockdown and homeschooling, I've got an app on my phone that actually shows me what my son is looking at on his iPad. And so when I ask him, did you do mathletics today? He will say, yes. And I can say, well, actually, no, you didn't. You were on Roblox. And another situation where I had my husband's business, $1 was being deducted out of his account, which didn't flag that to him because it was such a small amount, thinking it's a bank fee. So yeah, thank you for sharing that, because it's not just about the large organizations, it's about our whole entire community and to keep us safe.
So Michelle, maybe I just add something there, the $1 piece. So that's what the trigger is. So see, and they are deducting $1 from 1 million account. So it's undetected in the bank system because the threshold they have set, possibly if anything deducted more than $1, because the way the system is designed, anything above $1 will be notified with an alert, right? So these hackers are very smart. If they get an opportunity to breach into, and they know if I have access to $1 million account, and if I just deduct $1, because it will go unnoticed as a part of either the fraud or any other system, I will eventually get the $1 million, right? So you see the sophistication, the thought process. And I think so that's where I was coming about the education piece, that this education about somebody not paying the attention on the bank statement because it's $1 possibly is a trigger for a bigger problem, because you're not trying to understand why the $1, right? I can give an example, sorry, maybe when you register with Uber or any other cab first time, what happened? They say $1 transaction charge on your card. They withhold that, right? So, but then you get an alert that there's a withhold $1 amount, $1 from your credit card because you have just registered with the Uber the first time, very first time you register, right? But then you get an alert for that. But if somebody deducted $1, you're not getting, it might be deducted over the period of time and you might not realize that. So the point you bring it here, that there are powerful alerting mechanism, there are powerful system which can tell you what's happening. The technologies are designed in a way that it is a binary. It will not work, or it will work if you have configured it properly. And I definitely say use that technology to really understand rather than thinking about, okay, somebody will tell me. So just want to add what you said.
Thank you for that. Greg, I might direct this question to you. So why do you think companies really need to rethink what cybersecurity leadership is? And why do you think security leadership is essential for all organizations?
Yeah, that's two great questions there that I'd love to dig into some detail, but I'm going to have to, keep it pretty high level. So here in the US, I probably meet with, 2 to 3 CISOs a week, CEOs, board members. I participate in some podcasts here. I hear some of the most talented CISOs and from here in the US as well as, around the globe. And when you start to think about leadership, often people might think, well, who's responsible for cybersecurity? It's the CISO, or maybe it's the CTO if it's a smaller organization. Who is responsible and what does leadership mean? And I think when you start to think about, cybersecurity, it's in everyone's best interest to make sure that that the organization is secure. Just like if you were going into an office and you saw the assets and the facility in the office, you wouldn't want people just walking in and out that you can't identify, that you're not sure why they're there. So just like securing physical assets, we need to make sure that we're securing data, that we're securing systems, anything that could be input into those systems. We need to make sure that we've got, adequate security, around our technology that's empowering and supporting the business. So who looks after that? Is it the CISO, the CIO? Obviously, there's certain people that have fiduciary duties and particular accountabilities and responsibilities. But in essence, when I start to think about cybersecurity, the most important thing that leadership, the leaders in the organization can do is to drive a security awareness, a cybersecurity awareness culture, and making sure that there is adequate trainings, platforms, policies, processes that are understandable, adoptable, and can be executed on. And it's impossible for us to know everything. I definitely don't know everything about cybersecurity. I guarantee you that when I chat to some of the CISOs over here, they'll openly admit that they don't know everything about cybersecurity. So when you start to think about leadership, you've got to start to think about, well, who are the resources that are around me that I can call on that can bring that leadership, that can bring that expertise? And for large organizations, maybe you've got a resources pool that you can draw on. For smaller organizations, there's plenty of resources out there. You just got to look around your circles, whether it's industry bodies, fractional CISOs or security leaders, contractors, organizations like Aurion Systems. There's plenty of people within your network that you can call on that can bring that expertise depending on the size of the organization. So once you understand the risks of your organization, and that's got to be identified by different leaders within the organization. It's not the CISO's job. It's not just the CTO's job or the CEO's job. It's got to be a leadership group, and you've got to draw on people that have an interest in cybersecurity, that want to secure the organization, that are part of critical business units that maybe they don't have that interest, but they've got a responsibility. Then they've got to be part of that cybersecurity journey, that leadership team, so that we can then prioritize what are the risks, what do we need to fix first. And as Amit talked about, whatever you're doing today, a week, a month, 6 months' time, that's not going to secure the organization in a year or two. You've got to keep learning, keep evolving. And for me, that's what cybersecurity leadership looks like.
Yeah, totally agree. And I think, especially in the pandemic and now for the people in Sydney, us being in lockdown, we've got organisations not knowing where their employees are working. They could be working from a McDonald's. If they're not on the VPN or the VPN's not up to date, data is just important and financial implications as well. But before working on this series, it's like cybersecurity are big organizations, but it affects every single one of us in some form, way or another. So just on the last question, and it goes with the pandemic. During the pandemic, how have organizations coped with cybersecurity programs? And what were some of the challenges and the solutions to get around it?
No, that's a great question. It kind of builds off what I was talking about earlier a bit with cybersecurity leadership. And we see the economy, sectors, business evolving at a rapid pace, and that's only going to accelerate as organizations continue down the journey of digital transformation. And that is critical. You don't have the choice. If organizations do not have a digital transformation journey, strategy, and plans, then they're going to get left behind. So whether it's the natural forces of the competitive sectors that customers or organizations are operating in, or whether it's external factors like the environment, say in the US, we're coming into hurricane season. This can be incredibly disruptive, similar to a pandemic. People go into lockdown, offices close, people won't have access to Wi-Fi, telecommunications, food, transport, etc. So how do we manage a business that can be impacted like that? And this is where hackers, whether it's hackers from Russia or China, they'll take advantage of these situations. We saw just recently the 4th of July weekend and the Keynote attack, where 200 companies were exposed. They ended up, some of them had to shut down, lock down their systems. They went offline, and the impact to the business is significant. So, as I start to think about, what changes, you've got, a couple of different forces that you need to think about. One is just that digital transformation that I talk about, making sure that you're staying ahead of your competitors and you've got plans there. The second is the factors that we can't predict, whether it's a global pandemic and, people will be moving and working from home, or whether it's, a hurricane hitting the southern shores of the US, and you're going to lose that part of the geography for an unknown period of time, and that business will move. You've got to make sure that, the business, can adapt, can move quickly and be secure. And one thing I'd like to just touch on here is, I know I've been talking a lot about cybersecurity and security practices, but it's got to be a balance as well. We can't lock down the organization to a point where it becomes paralyzed or it's difficult to do business. So any cybersecurity policies and practices that you have, you've got to make sure that they're friendly for your customers so that they can continue to do business with you and they don't start to look elsewhere because it's just too slow, or perhaps they're not authenticated or something of that nature that really disrupts the transaction.
Yeah, totally agree. And if it's like, when data set, the companies and organizations had their data centers and, we were that they're secure, but once they go down and the customers can't get access to their data, it's not just the risk, but it's the faith they have in that customer, that they lose that customer to the competitors. Thank you, panelists. Now, before I hand it over to Pradeep, I wanted to start off with a thought. $1 trillion. It's in my bank account. No, I'm only joking. If you're wondering what that number is, let me clarify. This was the expected cost of global cybercrime incidents in year 2020. And this is according to the McPhee Global Report titled The Hidden Cost of Cybercrime. According to the annual Cyber Threats Reports, the Australian Cybersecurity Centre received one cybercrime report every 10 minutes in 2020. Although the remainder of 2021 brings uncertainty, many organisations have responded well to the sudden change, adapting and evolving to constant new normal. And I really want to stress on the new normal, in particular, the way in which we work. But for others, how can organisations prepare and protect themselves for data security and cybercrime with the majority of their workforce in work from home model? How can organisations continue to track, monitor, deliver and report on cybersecurity programs? I'll now hand over to Pradeep.
Hi, Michelle. Thanks for handing it over to me. And hello, everyone. It's been a pleasant morning and we are shifting to the afternoon. So while I got hold of everyone, I would like to thanks for listening to all of the insights that our dear members have to share with every one of us. So without taking much time, I would like to go further and go beyond. So now we have seen why cybersecurity is pretty crucial in the current time frame, and especially in the pandemic that we are in. So it has become much more essential to be aware of what cyber threats we are surrounded with. But at the same time, organizations need to make sure that they are moving swiftly and they are moving very positively towards making themselves sure of that they are risk-free, they are ahead of the vulnerabilities, they know their vulnerabilities, they know the threats, they perceive the threats. And at the same time, organizations need to make sure that they have plans and strategies in place to make sure that whatever shift is happening, be it left or right, we are well prepared. Our leadership is well ahead of what is going to happen. But at the same time, in order to have all the programs run successfully, we need to make sure that we are moving towards our goalposts that we have decided in the current time frame. And a lot of times we have seen, and Ashok, my colleague, will would have given much more statistics around that as to why a lot of projects never get completed when it comes under the cybersecurity program or portfolios. And there are quite a plenty of reasons, but one of the most important reasons that we have been able to figure out is basically because organizations doesn't know where to start. So one thing is to identify where to start. Then second challenge that these organizations faces is how to start. So that is where it becomes very crucial that a good amount of thinking is given around what to do, how to do, and consistently tracking and consistently showing the progress that we are making. And at the same time, we are within the budgets, because we know that if vulnerabilities are there and if the breach has happened, yes, it is costlier. But at the same time, how to make sure that within the cost that is there, within the funds that you have, can you make sure that your projects get delivered? So that is where the piece, that is where, a very critical aspect that comes up from, the Smartsheet that we have been heavily using across the industry landscape, be it utilities, be it oil and gas, be it supply chain. We have been able to successfully deliver projects around cybersecurity landscape to the organizations with the help of a very clear and very visible sort of a dashboard and a platform that we get from Smartsheet. So thanks, Michelle, for handing it over to me. So what I'll do is very quickly jump onto the demo that we have prepared. And this demo actually, basically highlights what exactly a portfolio of a cybersecurity looks like, why it is important, and what are the key factors that might result a project into getting hold, and what are the key factors that will keep your project moving and getting to the goalpost. So just giving a glimpse of what exactly I was talking about. So if you all can see my screen, so this is what a quick demo that we have flipped around looks like. At high level, what we are talking about is we should be able to realize where we are moving to, what is our project costing looking like. Are we under budget or are we going over budget? We should be able to get a glimpse of what our project health look like. So this is what we came up with to give you a glimpse of what can be achieved, how transparently it can be achieved, and how it can be monitored. Not just the progress, how your resources are being allocated with your cybersecurity aspects, be it remediation, be it testing, your penetration testing, wherever you are moving to. You should be knowing what milestones are being ticked off, and what are the running tasks, and how soon you are going to finish. At the same time, you need to make sure that you are under budget and delivering onto what you have basically agreed on or decided on. So I think not taking much time, it's more important to understand why it is important to, as an organization, run such projects successfully and, with consistent monitoring that makes sense to the leadership as well, that yes, we are moving in the right direction. We are making sure all the check boxes are ticked. And at the same time, making sure we perceive our threats, we perceive our vulnerabilities, and making sure they are at the par.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Pradeep. Thank you, Craig. And thank you, Amit. You all have together actually emphasized so much rightly around the whole topic, whole environment around the cybersecurity needs. And I think with real examples, very much relatable examples, I think most of the audiences, including myself, will be able to closely relate with those examples which have affected us on a daily basis without, whether we know it or not, we do get affected. I have a small statistic to share, which is coming from Australian market, where every 10 minutes, we have some sort of incident report being logged around cybersecurity. And surprisingly and very dangerously, it's very, it's not surprisingly, but it's basically, it scares me to know the fact that most of them are because of 95% of them are basically because of human errors. Now that further emphasizes there's such a powerful need to create a common language around cybersecurity, so that everyone, when I say everyone, every stakeholder, common people, companies, organizations, CISOs, CIOs, CTOs, product companies, project teams, they all should come together and understand, okay, just like we understand money in our bank account. If I say $5, I have $5 in my pocket, you understand, yes, $5 means $5. The same way we need to create something around a common number where everyone is talking about same number, and whether it goes up, whether it goes down, it creates similar feeling and similar understanding around cybersecurity. So that's the future I'm looking at. And that's exactly where we want to basically head towards. And as I said, thank you, everyone. So that's all from my side. Thank you very much for everyone.
Thank you, team. Thank you, attendees. Yes, look, please reach out for any questions. Aurion systems are available to help you look through and review your current digital transformation, cybersecurity, and any other processes that you think maybe need to be tweaked in these times of the new normal, and we need to adapt quickly. And otherwise, thank you.
Michelle, if I can just say thank you very much for having me today. I'd love to thank Smartsheet, Aurion Systems, and obviously the audience. Just remember, this cybersecurity journey, we're warriors. We're all out there to learn from each other, share. You're not on this journey alone. Feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. Happy to coach, mentor, connect people, as they go down the path of the cybersecurity journey and securing their organization.
Close out. Thank you so mumuch for having me. Just be aware what's happening around. That's the key. And then from there you start. So thanks everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Amit.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone, and keep safe. And good luck with homeschooling.
Thank you. Bye.